Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Around the Big Ten podcast. I am Marc Givler. Got Chip Minnich here with me, as always. Big Ten schedule breakdowns continue. We are going to do the Indiana Hoosiers on this episode. Another fascinating team. I don't say this ever. I say this a lot, but there are a lot of fascinating teams in the Big Ten. But this one's interesting because of the surprise year they had last year. And everyone wants to know, including us, can they duplicate that? Can they do that again? Can they win 10 games and go to the playoffs again? Are they going to regress? If so, how much are they going to regress? There's a lot of questions here after a tremendous season last year. So Chip, just your opening thoughts before we look at the schedule on, we've kind of called maybe Illinois being this year's Indiana. Could Indiana be this year's Indiana?
It's not beyond the realm of possibility, but Mark, as you said, the element of surprise, Indiana no longer has that. I mean, the expectations now is Curt Cignetti is going to, recognize that, one of the great things about college football and Big Ten fans, and I'm sure Indiana fans are no exception to this. One of the great maxims in life is that no good deed ever goes unpunished. So now that he has established Indiana as a program that is capable of being a college football playoff contender, that the fans' expectations is going to be that Indiana is going to be one of those programs that can challenge for Big Ten supremacy. Now, a moment ago you said, is there going to be regression? In my humble estimation, there's going to be some. It's not going to be like, falling, down to like 6 wins per se. But I do think that there's going to be some regression. I think that let's not ignore the fact that Tino Sinceri, who was the offensive coordinator, is no longer there. He's now at UCLA. They have some turnover. Obviously, just a lot of the talent that Curt Cignetti brought in from James Madison has moved on to the NFL, or and Indiana has also been one of the more active teams in the transfer portal. Fernando Mendoza, we're both very high on him at quarterback. So I just think Indiana is going to be one of the better teams in the Big Ten. My initial expectation is that they will not be as dominant as they were in 2024, but I can always be proven wrong.
Yeah, going to be really interesting. Going to find out a lot about them. I personally love Fernando Mendoza. I think that's going to be one of the big portal. I'm not going to go full like Cam Ward to Miami type of impact, but I think it's going to be a significant addition. I think he's going to play at a very high level for them. I think he's going to give them a very interesting dynamic and has a chance to absolutely be one of the best quarterbacks in the Big Ten this year if things click. So I think that's a big pickup for them. But yeah, let's get into the schedule here and kind of see what we're looking at here, Chip. I'll read it first and I'll give first reactions. Again, I'm doing this for people who are listening on audio. I know this may be annoying for video people, but just people listening on audio need to have some type of frame of reference here. So Indiana's schedule is home Old Dominion, home Kennesaw State, home Indiana State, home Illinois, at Iowa, bye week, at Oregon, home Michigan State, home UCLA, at Maryland, at Penn State, home Wisconsin, bye week, at Purdue. Chip, initial thoughts on that?
Okay, Sherman soft. The first 3 games, the non-conference, I mean, Indiana is going to roll all 3 of those teams, Old Dominion, Kennesaw State, Indiana State, which is fine. What jumps out at me is where I don't want to say that the season hinges on it, but where this can be, we were just talking earlier about the possible regression. That Indiana-Illinois game on September 20th is looming large in my mind, because Illinois, they're going to be coming in there. Illinois is feeling confident. Indiana is certainly going to be feeling confident. So I think, that game is going to certainly bear watching, and then going on the road to Iowa. And we've talked about how we think Iowa is going to have a really challenging season, but going to Kinnick Stadium is not, it's never an easy place. So it could be the kind of thing where Indiana could be 5-0 at the end of September, or they could be 3-2. It would not be surprising to me on either account.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting stretch there for sure. They're kind of in the middle. Once they get out of that non-league. Yeah, they're going to be 3-0. So they're going to be 3-0, spoiler alert. And then what are they going to be after Illinois, at Iowa, at Oregon? And that's going to really dictate whether we're talking about a team that's going to be in the playoff hunt again, or whether we're talking about a team that's going to be more in that, maybe 7-8 win range. But yeah, that's definitely the heart of their schedule, and in more ways than one. They're right there in late September into October. Tough road game there at Penn State in November, but then you get Wisconsin at home, which I think they can handle. You got at Maryland in there as well in November, and then you get a bye week, and you get Purdue, who has all sorts of rebuilding issues there for Barry Odom, who I do think was a good hire. But so going to be interesting as the heavens open up outside. I don't know if anyone. So if there's a little bit of rumbling in the background, we are getting quite a storm here. But yeah, I think that especially there, because no one's going to blame them if they go out to Oregon and lose. It's can you get Illinois at home? Can you win at Kinnick? Those two are so big, because if you can start 5-1, then you got Michigan State, UCLA, Maryland, and those are going to be very winnable.
Certainly. Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was going to say, let's not forget last year, Indiana really took it to Michigan State and UCLA. As a matter of fact, it was kind of like the UCLA game. Just the way that I seem to remember it was not that I was anticipating UCLA being a dominant team their first year in the Big Ten, but the fact that Indiana went out to UCLA and really took it to them. Just looking at what the final score, it was 42-13. When they went out to play the Bruins, the fact that they have UCLA coming cross country at the end of October, I think Indiana should be able to handle them fine. I think that like you said, that game in Autzen against Oregon at the beginning on October 11th and at Penn State, those games right there, I think it'd be fair to say Indiana will be the underdog. But there's nothing, when I look at this schedule, there's nothing outside of those two games where I say that Indiana should not be favored in just about almost every game that they play.
Yeah, I'm going to be fat. That Indiana, to me, there are certain games in the Big Ten this year where, the winner of that game is going to have a great opportunity to make the playoff, and the loser of that game is going to have a really tough time making the playoff. And I don't know if anything embodies that maybe more. And people may laugh at this, and this may shock people given where these programs were at 5 years ago, but I don't know if anything embodies that more than that Indiana-Illinois game. The winner of that game is going to have a great chance to be in that 9-3, 10-2 range at the end of the year, which is right on the playoff bubble. And 10-2 in the Big Ten this year, regardless of schedule, is probably going to get you in. So that to me is a huge one there, because if you're Indiana, since that's who we're talking about right now, you're 4-0. If you can beat Iowa at Kinnick, which is tough, but not impossible. You're 5-0. You can lose the Oregon game, then you win, you beat Michigan State at home, you beat UCLA at home, you beat Maryland, then you lose to Penn State, fine, 2 losses. Then you beat Wisconsin at home and at Purdue, you're in the playoff. You're in the playoff again.
The one thing that Indiana fans just have to be prepared for, because I'm not disagreeing with anything you said, is that, okay, if they get to that 9-3, 10-2 spot, is that they will hear from the chatterboxes on ESPN about how Indiana didn't play anybody, especially like that non-conference schedule. And I'm not suggesting that every team should be going out and trying to, like play like a murderer's row non-conference schedule. I am of the mindset that, okay, having one challenging game in the non-conference is actually a good thing, because in the case of Indiana, since we're talking about them, the fact that they're going to steamroll 3 teams before they've truly been tested might be a detriment. I'm not saying it will be a detriment. It could be just to the other side of that coin. For what it's worth, Illinois, they play Duke. Now, Duke, are they going to be up for national championship contention? Not at all. But that's a more challenging non-conference opponent than any of the teams that Indiana's playing. So that's basically something that Indiana fans, if you're listening to this or watching this, just be prepared for the criticism. You can take it to heart, or you can just kind of, let it roll off your back that, okay, like you're going to be mocked and ridiculed for your non-conference schedule if you are one of those teams that's on, like the discussion panel when the college football playoff teams are being bandied about.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. The comparison I want to make is not necessarily apples to apples. Personally, I will have to see a 10-2 Big Ten team not get in the playoff to believe it in this new landscape. Obviously, we're not expanding further until next year, when that'll become even more true. But even in this current one, I kind of have to see it to believe it for a Big Ten or SEC team to go 10-2 and kind of get left in the dust there. But there's going to be 2 things. There's going to be the Notre Dame game last year, which I actually don't think looks nearly as bad on them as people say it does. That was actually one of the closer. I mean, none of those first round games were competitive last year.
That's true.
They were much more competitive. They were more competitive against Notre Dame than Tennessee was against Ohio State. Are we gonna start punishing Tennessee and the SEC because of that game? I mean, there was nothing competitive about that Ohio State Tennessee game. So like that was actually one of the closer first. It might have been the closest by points first round game, but it wasn't any less competitive than any of the other first round games. But that'll come up. The other thing that'll come up is, like you said, the schedule. Like there's a chance they could get Miami'd. People looked at Miami last year and said, no conference championship game appearance, schedule's terrible, not the great, the wins aren't great, the losses aren't great. Like there's just, we can't do this. Your conference isn't very good. But again, they're not in the ACC, they're in the Big Ten, and that's going to get them some extra cachet, if you will, I think, from the committee. But yeah, I mean, 10-2, there's going to be some debate for sure. There's going to be SEC Network, ESPN. They're going to be, well, why should this team get in over 8-4 South Carolina? There's going to be that. That's fine, And then South Carolina will go lose to Illinois by 20 in a bowl game, and we'll all laugh that people wanted South Carolina in, or So, but so that is going to happen, Chip. That you're right, but I'm not. I would have to see it to believe it that they could go 10-2, because at minimum you've beat Illinois, who's going to be pretty good.
Yes.
Like at minimum, you're going to have that top 25 win against Illinois. You may have 2 really nice wins. You may have a win against Oregon or Penn State, and maybe you lose to Illinois and Iowa, or you lose to Illinois and Wisconsin or something like that. And or Illinois and, you beat, or Illinois and Oregon and you beat Penn State. Like there are combinations here where you have 1 really good win or 2 really good wins at 10-2, and may even help you not to play in the Big Ten championship game, because then you don't have to play either Penn State again or Oregon again or Ohio State or something like that, where you come out of that 10-3, you actually may hurt yourself playing in that game if you lose it. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. So Chip, best case, worst case here.
Okay, I'm going to go with the best case because we've kind of hinted around it. I'm going to go best case right off the bat. Just looking at the schedule, I see 2 games that jump out to me where Indiana will be the underdog, and that is when they go on October 11th out to Oregon, and then on November 8th when they go to Penn State. So that kind of translates into a 10-2 for me in terms of like best case. I would say like worst case, and this is, I mean, like this is a stretch. I'm gonna honestly, I really do. I think like worst case is like 7-5, and what I mean by that is they lose not only the 2 games that I just mentioned, but they lose those September games to Illinois, at Iowa, and then somewhere along the way, like maybe, they just kind of, maybe like in a tailspin, even though it's at home, like maybe they lose to Wisconsin. So I still see this team as a bowl team, but I am very much of the mindset that with the non-conference, as well as just the way that the schedule lays out, I think, Indiana's going to be one of the better teams. I'm leaning definitely more towards my best case being like 10-2.
Yeah, we have a similar range. Mine's a very small range. We just did Iowa, where I had a crazy range for best and worst case. My best and worst case range here is pretty small. I think their best case is 10-2. I agree. I think their worst case is 8-4.
Yeah, I was thinking 8-4, but then I thought, okay, well, what?
Look, we don't count
right.
injury, because if, or else everyone's best case is or everyone's worst case is 0-12, because anyone could have a MRSA infection go through the locker room and everyone's out for the year, so but realistically speaking, I think 8-4, because then you're losing at Oregon, you're losing at Penn State, you're losing at Illinois, you're losing at Iowa. It's like, okay, you're just gonna you're not gonna win any of those games. You go 0-4 in those games, and then I'm going to have you lose another one. I'm thinking, best cases they lose to Oregon and Penn State, and that they beat everybody else. And the worst case is they lose to Oregon and Penn State and Illinois, and then either Iowa gets them on the road, or they stub their toe at home against Michigan State or Wisconsin and just play really bad that week. Maybe Michigan State coming off the road game to Oregon is kind of a scary one for them that I think maybe we need to keep an eye on. But it's hard to see them going worse with Fernando Mendoza at quarterback. Cignetti's done a great job in the portal. They get Roman Hemby from Maryland, the running back. I thought they did a masterful job in the portal. I think Cignetti can really coach and motivate. And I think they're going to be at least 8-4. Now, that being said, do I think it's more likely they go 8-4 than 10-2? Probably. I think more so going to be 8-4, maybe 9-3.
Mm-hmm.
And I think 10-2 is everything's got to go line up pretty well for you. But again, I don't see them winning fewer than 8. And with 10-2 sneaking as a wild card again type of upside to me. What does that say? It's kind of parting thought here, Chip. What does that say to you that we're talking about Indiana in a way where their disaster scenarios are 7-8 wins? What does that tell us about Curt Cignetti?
That's a home run hire, that they really, this was a program for years. And again, kind of, jumping into my old man, time machine. They forced Bill Mallory into retirement 30 some years ago. And ever since then, it's just been a series of just hits and misses, more misses than anything. And with Cignetti, the fact that he came in, and I realize he's not the exact same, but we talk about Brett Bielema, not he likes to stoke. I think Cignetti is of a similar, kind of a similar cut of cloth, so to speak. He's very brash. He's very confident. He for him to, be asked about, the expectations last year and bristle at the fact that Indiana was picked to be one of the worst teams. And then, he deservedly won National Coach of the Year. So I think Indiana, I'm happy for the fans. I'm happy for the program, in the sense that, Indiana's not a football, traditionally heavy football state in terms of the talent per se, especially when you've got
better though.
It is getting better. But when you've got, Purdue and Notre Dame in state, and then, let's not ignore the fact that, okay, and I'm just going to say it, Ohio State every so often coming in and plucking a player or two that they really like and taking them to Columbus.
Their coaches, Indiana fans will hate this, but I know for a fact, Ohio State's coaches consider Indianapolis to be the same to them as Cincinnati or Cleveland.
There you go.
They like expect to be so yeah.
But
you're competing a lot for that talent. You are.
And so I just think Indiana, that they finally got, after a 30-year kind of stretch in the wilderness, so to speak, with Cignetti, a proven winning coach who's come in, who knows, like you said, I think not only being a tremendous motivator, but I think it's an underrated skill that we're going to, as college football fans, gain more and more of an appreciation of, being able to identify talent within the transfer portal and get them into your program and assimilate them. He demonstrated that. Now, I think it was a little easier last year because a lot of these guys played for him at James Madison. But, like you said, like I think Mendoza, Hemby, these are guys that, I mean, they demonstrated at their previous schools that they were talented. I think it would be foolish to predict that they're not going to do well at Indiana. So, yeah, if you're an Indiana fan, you have a lot to be looking forward to this coming year.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating. And I totally agree with you about the personality thing. I like the personalities in the Big Ten right now. I think obviously the talent and the abilities of the coaches to bring in these players is the biggest thing in the Big Ten's kind of ascension from kind of being thought of as below the SEC to now it's like Big Ten SEC. But I think the other thing that has helped this conference in terms of its national appeal and notoriety are the personalities of the coaches. Like, even like Ohio State fans are going to get mad at me for this. I don't care. When the conference was being run by Kirk Ferentz, Jim Tressel, Lloyd Carr, and Joe Paterno, oh my goodness, the coach speak. Oh my goodness. You could watch 45 minutes of them talking and they would say nothing. I've never seen anyone like Jim Tressel who could talk for 30 minutes and say nothing. It was incredible. Same thing with Kirk Ferentz. These guys would talk and talk and talk for 30, 40 minutes, their weekly pressers, and they would tell you absolutely nothing. James Franklin will give you quotes. Ryan Day will give you quotes. Dan Lanning will give you quotes. Brett Bielema will give you quotes. Kurt Cignetti will give you quotes. All of these guys have some level, you may not like them, but they're going to be distinct personalities who may or may not say some things that are a little bit controversial. They may ruffle some feathers. They may spit out some hot takes. I'm cool with that. I'd much rather have that. Even if I totally disagree with what they're saying, I would much rather have that than listening to Jim Tressel just grandstand for 40, filibuster, whatever, for 40 minutes about whatever he wanted to talk about that had absolutely nothing to do with what he was asked. Like, it's a much more fascinating. These people are much more interesting to cover. They just are. I'm sorry, but they are.
Well, I'm not disagreeing with any of that. That's why I'm smiling for those of you that can't see me. I am smiling, and you're right. I think the coach speak has certainly plummeted with the additions of the new coaches. If anything, what I'm smiling and thinking about as we've talked about it, and if anything, I just hope that we're not building it up too much, and the game is not as exciting as we're anticipating it to be. But I am looking forward to the comments and the quips, and some of the verbal barrages that might be thrown between Cignetti and Bielema in the days leading up to that game in September, because I think both of them know how to try to push buttons. And considering the fact that you and I both agree that we think both Indiana and Illinois are going to be two of the better teams within the Big Ten, and the stakes of it, the results, could certainly prove to be fortuitous for the winning team. It's going to be interesting to see, how nice they like to play in the sandbox, so to speak, in the days leading up to that game in September.
Yeah, going to be fun. Going to be real fun. Like I said, I enjoy covering this conference so much more now than like I would have 20 years ago with just the constant coach speak, and don't want to answer any questions, don't want to give any bulletin board material, just afraid to even say anything about anything. This is such a better product. This is such a more entertaining product for me. And Cignetti's been a big big part of that as well. That'll do it for this one, but we're both pretty high on the Hoosiers again. I think it's fair to say we don't think last year was a fluke. Will they be able to repeat it and go 10-2 and make the playoff? We'll see. There's a path to doing that. We'll see. But I think it's fair to say that moving forward, we can expect Indiana to be a legitimate player within the conference. It's no longer like the school that you get them at home and you're like, oh, good, we got Indiana at home this year. That's a win. That's a W. Like you're really going to have to prepare and play for these guys because Cignetti's going to have them ready to go.
I'll say this much, and I realize this may come across as a snarky comment. It's not meant to be, but the days of Indiana being happy for Ohio State fans being in the stands so that they could take pictures of all of the different shades of red, for their promotional, come to Indiana football, like those Ohio State, if they play Indiana, it'll be, either like in the Big Ten championship or in a playoff game. Indiana, I think they're going to fill those stands legitimately, and the product on the field is something that Hoosier fans are going to be happy to see.
That's a fan base that is clearly energized right now.
Yes.
I don't think it hurts them, the football team, that the basketball team just hasn't been able to quite figure it out the last few years. I think that's even helping them and now they're starting to steer. We're starting to steer that. We're starting to see that athletic department steer a lot of resources to football. So I think this is a program with some staying power. So we'll see. We'll see how the season goes. It'll be a big year for them. Cignetti can validate some of the things from last year, win 8-9 games, something like that, maybe even more, but just kind of validate like, hey, that wasn't like just a blip on the radar. Like we're here to win. So I think that'll be big for them if they can do that as well. But thanks everyone again for watching and listening. We're getting there. We got a few left here, but we're getting through them. We'll get through them before media days start here at the end of the month. And so look forward to more of these, but thanks everyone again for watching and listening, and we'll talk to you again soon.